So, Sunny, why don't we get started? You have won a number of awards, and I'm sure there are a number others, in your future. You've been on stage with Prince William. Um, Tell us a little bit about, like, I'm sure people at this point can Google you and they can hear they can read about sort of the stuff online. But tell us about, like, where does Sikander Khan begin his journey, and then at some point, how did he become from Sikander to Sunny? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I was born in the U.S. to immigrant parents from Pakistan. Funny enough, I think I was named after the movie Mukandar Ka Sikandar or something like that. But I'm sure some more of the older folks have seen it. But my father is from northern Pakistan. My mom is from Punjab. And I don't know where the name Sunny comes from. I have no idea, but I just kind of stuck with it, and it stuck with me. Um, but yeah, just a little bit about my journey. I'd say just growing up from a low income background, being the child of immigrants, I always had this desire to want to do more, and I always dreamed about going to college and using that as an opportunity to create a better future for myself, for the people around me, and hopefully use that as a way to help people. When I was just in high school, learning about what it means to graduate from high school, go to college and such, I was exposed to just a lot of people telling me like, hey, if you just stick to things that you're passionate about, be your authentic self, it'll open doors for you and create opportunities for you um, to achieve those goals. And so for me, I was just always interested in trying to figure out how I could help people and use any privileges and opportunity I had to do that as much as possible. And so throughout high school, throughout my early years, I spent a lot of time just doing volunteer work. I was involved in my high school. I did a lot of stuff at the hospital, just trying to figure out ways to drive impact. And I think I was able to do so in a way that was successful, and I got a lot of amazing opportunities in my community that eventually led to me receiving the Gates Millennium Scholarship, which it's from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they give it to low-income first-generation college students who, throughout their upbringing, have done work that has been inspirational, and they've really used their privileges and the little privileges to try to be leaders in their communities. And it was cool because I knew then that I didn't have to worry about having to pay for college, and I would have more time in my hand. And then at the conference, right before I started college at the University of Michigan, the folks that were providing the scholarship were telling us like, hey, now that you have this opportunity to continue doing good work, we want you to use the opportunity to really be the best version of yourself and do things that you're passionate about. And I took that very seriously. And so it was cool because when I got to college at U of M, I was definitely excited to leverage the privileges and opportunities I had over there to try to do something more meaningful with my time. Um, and then it wasn't until my second year, because my first year at Michigan, I just joined a bunch of clubs wanting to see like, how I could be a leader, how I could do humanitarian work. And I felt like I kept hitting roadblocks where um, there's a lot of organizations out there, but it's very difficult to be able to, as a young person, get like actually dictate and drive impact and really create the change that you want to. And so around that time, I decided my second year to drop those organizations and focus on trying to start a project from start to finish of my own. And that became Paani, where my friends and I were like, okay, let's start this organization focused on providing clean water to people in Pakistan. And we set this goal that by the time that we graduated, we would build 10 water wells, and do so in a way that we felt proud and felt like we were really doing great work. But that ended up laying the foundation for the organization that we ended up building over the next, now it's like 6.5 years.
So you thought it was going to be a part-time, short-term project, and now it's taken over your life.
Exactly that. Yeah, it was funny. It very much snowballed because when we first started, I and my friends, we literally sold donuts on campus just trying to raise money, and then we were going to take that money and then give it to a local organization that built wells in Pakistan. And then, just through that experience, it really opened my eyes to just opportunity for us to have bigger impact. And what I mean by that is like raised around $1,100, and we sent this money to an organization to go build wells in Pakistan. And we got back a few pictures that didn't really instill confidence in me that, one, our money was used to the best of its ability, and two, like, was this even our water well? Because up until that point, I didn't realize just how difficult it is to really build something in Pakistan and actually like, work from overseas to do something like this. And so from that point on, my mission switched from just wanting to fund a few water wells through the channels at the University of Michigan to like, hey, let's build out a system where we can kind of change that process, where we can make it if somebody wants to donate, they can have confidence knowing that they'll get pictures, photos, videos, water tests back, knowing that, hey, this is my water well. I can see the land beforehand. I get excited knowing that this project is mine and I have a sense of ownership with it. And again, like, we didn't expect it to grow into anything beyond just kind of a little college project. But then no, here we are a few years later and we're at 17, 18,000 water wells and the growth keeps going.
It is absolutely amazing. What are your parents, being traditional Pakistani parents, are they like, oh man, you could have been a doctor, you could have been somebody one day? What is their opinion about all of this?
It's funny, right? Even when I think we had like 5,000, 6,000 wells built, they were a little bit skeptical that it was even a real thing. Like and I was just like, no, like, look, I have like gigabytes, terabytes of photos and stuff. But not until I was like on the ground taking photos and like actually seeing the projects and interacting with the community members on my first visits over to those communities, did they realize, oh, okay, this is real. And then so I mean that was super cool. But no, you're spot on. It was funny. My even though I'm working right now at Microsoft and that ship to be a doctor has sailed, my father frequently brings up, he's like, oh, so when are you gonna go back to like med school and stuff? And I'm just like,
When are you gonna get a real job, Sonny? Maybe one day.
I got to figure that out.
No, it's funny, some of those, so much alike in parents from that generation. So this starts. I think I've heard the story. You're in a Wendy's with some of your friends. That's where this idea starts. How did you actually make the connection to like in Pakistan? Like how did you find the folks to trustworthy folks to work with and actually be confirmed that whatever they were telling you was actually happening?
Great questions. Yeah. I mean, so this took like a year and a half. I want to say a year and a half for us to actually find those connections. I spent a lot of time just researching. I found one organization, then I found another organization, then I found another organization. Just going through conversations of like, hey, this is what our vision is. We want to make sure that we can take photos and videos from start to finish. We have this level of transparency, accessibility. Can you work with us for that? And then once we got to like deeper conversations, most of those conversations would fall off.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I decided to focus more so on organizations that had a track record of transparency and impact and figuring out how to work with them. So what I ended up doing is I identified organizations that had worked with the USAID or UNICEF for larger projects, meaning if a flood happens, if a dam breaks, like these are organizations that these US government officials have worked with before in order to ensure that these large scale solutions can be solved. And so the way that I basically approached them was like, hey, you guys do all this amazing work, and I know that you have a small subset of projects that you do like hand pumps and stuff. What if we partner with you to make that a focal point of our organization? Meaning like we can focus on working with you to build out this model where every single bit of the process is transparent from start to finish, where we can raise money. We'll give you a list of wells to build, and then you work with us to ensure that this process is good and meets our rigid standards. And that's basically how the conversation started. And once we had finally solidified that partner, we did our first fundraiser in St. Louis with a friend whose family was doctors, and they had a bunch of doctors in the audience. And that was the first time we raised a substantial sum of money, where we raised $30,000 that first night, which was like 300 times the amount we'd raised prior. But yeah, then our first effort to take that funds and start building out this project was successful, and we realized we kind of had something so special, and we had a partner that we could trust.
Yeah, and was the most of the issues, were they sort of launching Paani, or has it been sort of scaling Paani, right? Because those are sort of different problems, right?
Yeah, great question. It's funny. I think that question depends on like what people's strengths are. For me personally, one of my biggest strengths is just thinking about growth, relationships, connections, and things like that. So I would actually say that like being able to scale after we figured out the foundation, how our structure would work and what our core experience was like. I feel like that process of growth was second to, just building that foundation. Because if we weren't able to build that foundation and, make the connections that we did and dedicate the time to build those relationships, then I don't think it would have been even possible for us to scale or then grow. Because for me, I just feel like everything is kind of the snowball where it's like, okay, the ball starts with the ball starts with first initiative, inspiration, and then it comes to like, okay, how do you actually make this work? And then from there, once you have something that's good that people love, it'll just continue to grow as long as you keep those fundamental values there.
Yeah. Um, who are your biggest influencers in life on a personal level?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for myself, I really look up to people that have come from adversity or difficult situations and really made something of themselves. And so like from my local community, I look at people who were first generation like myself, the first people in their family to go to college. And I just think about the fact that, hey, like they came from these tough situations and they're able to work hard, have that work ethic and really change things for the better. And so I look at people in my local community like that, but then at the same time, I'm very ambitious, and I always look at people who have really pushed the boundaries. So when I look at people like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or even athletes, because I'm a huge NBA fan, I just love reading their stories and seeing how, people that struggled so much were then able to, you know, push themselves, challenge themselves, and build things that helped out a lot of people and really changed the way that changed their lives and other people's lives. And so I have a range of influences, and they vary from politics when I see like Imran Khan to just US tech wizards. So I take inspiration from any and everything.
Yeah, and clearly it's working based on the work that you're doing. I want to kind of go back, but emphasize the numbers, because I think the numbers are amazing. I think you said 10 wells was the goal in the beginning. So where are we? Number of wells, number of like amount of money raised, and I think you also do some other stuff around flood relief as well. So can you just highlight those for the folks watching?
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy now to just say these numbers, like over 18,000 water wells across rural Pakistan. Each water well every single day is providing 1.5 million people access to clean, healthy water. And in that process, that's been funded by $6 million in donations from small people, small donors, just every single person that wants to contribute, either because they want to honor a family member or they want to help out a community over there. Um, and and like you hinted to, our impact doesn't just stop at water wells. We've built over 120 solar water plants. We've built over a dozen mosques. We built over a dozen homes. We've built a school in collaboration with a U.S.-based CEO for Afghan refugees. And during the floods, we handed out over 3 million meals to people who needed it most. So it's incredible what you can do when we minimize overhead. Like we take the bare minimum needed in order to scale, in order to make sure that our staff is paid on the ground and that all of our logistics are able to be efficient. But just because we're so transparent with our money, and we don't have any budget of aggressive media spend or just any aggressive costs, it allows our impact to just be a lot more effective than almost any other organization.
Yeah, and I will second that. I'll share a brief story, because when we haven't spoken before this, but I've used Paani for some of my personal projects. So when I was reaching out for setting up this event, I emailed the email box on your website, and I was expecting that some person who's not Sunny will reach back out to me, but it was yourself. You were the one who emailed me back, and I was like, oh, is Sunny actually overlooking this mailbox? So definitely. Completely agree with the lack of overhead and keeping things very efficient. I mean, sometimes that's the way to kind of do this. I'll ask one question, sort of looking back, and then I want to shift the conversation to like, where do you want to go from here into the
Mhm.
future? COVID, impactful to Paani, not impactful? Like, how did you deal with the whole, the world shutting down?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember that vividly because Um, around so mid 2019 is when we really finalized our model. Our model being able to effectively raise funds, identify communities, and then provide those communities water wells. And so our goal for the next couple of years was like, hey, we're going to do a lot of these in-person fundraisers, in-person events to drive awareness and make sure that a lot of people know about our cause. So then we can scale and continue to grow. March 2020, a lot of things change, right? Like where everything just kind of becomes virtual. And I think we have like 2,000 followers on Instagram that aren't very influential, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do to really scale? And I just made the decision like, okay, let's optimize for digital, let's optimize for mobile and try to get a lot of eyes on our projects digitally. And so what we did then was, I mean, things have changed a little bit because a lot of these practices are now more mainstream. TikTok was just starting out. So we reached out to people that were getting a lot of attention on TikTok that were Muslim. And we told them like, hey, do water well projects with us, like raise $200, build a well, share it with your audience. We did that. We started reaching out to local like Muslim organizations, like Muslim student associations, and we were telling them like, hey, you guys can do these virtual fundraisers with us, and use that as a means to like have community involvement, despite the fact that a lot of the world is obviously shut down. And so this focus on digital really became an emphasis, and it allowed us to scale beyond any expectation because it made it so people were discovering our organization through word of mouth, through stories, and we really ramped up that digital presence to make sure that we were ready for any amount of people coming and visiting our website and checking things out. We're optimizing for search engines. We were doing like projects that got us a lot of attention through social media. And very, very quickly, our presence and almost all of our funds just started coming through these virtual means, and we ended up stabilizing at around $60,000, and that per month in donations from just people that have been donating in that way. And it was interesting because what we initially thought was going to be something that was really going to derail our future and our growth. We were planning banquets and like events with like anybody that we could find, or cricket stars or mosques, and ended up an opportunity for us to shift our presence online and just really, really grow from there. So it's incredible how things worked out.
Yeah, and so it sounds like being new and efficient allowed you to pivot and evolve very quickly. Did it also give you an edge because you were sort of coming out of the sort of the universities and colleges, and you kind of knew about the TikTok and the social media, whereas some of the more established organizations who've been around for many years probably weren't paying as close attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one edge that we have is just our youth because, when we do interact with other organizations that are doing similar work, a lot of people are much older or much more established in their community. And I think that as a result, they might not be as aware of like startup-y practices or just quick growth tactics that we were able to leverage and take advantage of, just being people that are more young and tapped into a lot of these methods for growth. And so I think that like, we use our weaknesses of youth and inexperience as our strength to figure out how to get creative and get really into the weeds and grindy about our projects and our efforts.
Wonderful. So let's look forward a little bit. Um, we're in May, and I recently just became aware that there's a massive heat wave going on in Pakistan, and they're talking about shutting down the schools maybe a little bit early. So climate change is obviously a huge thing, of a huge item of concern for Pakistan. So maybe that is a context, and water being so important, clean drinkable water being so important. So where are we going in the future, Sonny?
Yeah, great questions, great context. I'm sure we're all aware that water scarcity is continuing to get more and more extreme in Pakistan, and it's a multitude of factors between climate change, water mismanagement, just a lot of different issues. For us, our solutions are and our approach is multifaceted. So, like right now, we're focused on making sure that we're providing that clean, healthy water through our water wells, our water systems, in those vehicles. But we're also trying to think long term, like how do we, as an organization that has built this type of respect and impact and trust, leverage that in order to scale into these other verticals that would allow us to tackle some of these more complex issues. So, I mean, just in the long term, we're thinking about how do we from an education standpoint, raise it to the masses like, hey, these are practices that can help us improve from a perspective of climate change in terms of proper water management to make sure that some of these issues are tackled more directly. But it is very difficult, right? Because, a lot of these short-term ideas aren't going to really make up for just the paradigm shift that needs to be absorbed across not only Pakistan but across the world in order to deal with these issues. So we're trying to do the best that we can to educate, to put new innovative solutions in to deal with some of these more complex issues. But the type of change that we need to really make things better, it's going to come from people all across the world to really put their best foot forward and realize the gravity of the situations that we're in and how that's impacting those others.
Yeah, it's a much bigger problem. Um, I noticed currently your the two locations that you're focused on is interior Sindh. I'm from Punjab, so I think interior Sindh is the right terminology.
Yeah.
And then it's KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. In the future, staying in those regions or other places are on the horizon across Pakistan.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're from Punjab because that's actually the next place we're starting our projects. We just did a little pilot where we are going to be doing some initiatives in Multan for the longer term. So those projects should be done in the next couple of months, and so I'm excited about those. But yeah, to answer your question, our goal is to be able to support the entirety of Pakistan. To ideally make it so anybody from any group, any province in Pakistan that feels like, hey, I want to give back to this region because it's miles from where I grew up. I want to be able to make that contribution there. We want to enable that. We want to enable that through our organization. So in the short term, in terms of growth, that's definitely our first opportunity. But just in the longer term, we want to be able to expand our reach and our impact to other areas that have significant need beyond just Pakistan. And so ideally in the next couple of years, we can identify some locations and try to replicate our best practices to encourage and really build relationships in those areas and hopefully drive a similar type of impact.
Yeah, because this concept of clean drinkable water is not a problem that only Pakistan is facing. You'll have to tell your dad that the med school plans are on hold for a few more years.
A couple more years, yeah.
If the plans go outside Pakistan. One last question, and then I'll turn it over to Khadija because we have some really good Q&A that have come in. You mentioned digital, you mentioned technology. It sort of helped you transform yourself quickly through COVID. Now there's all this talk about AI and other amazing things. I'm sure within Microsoft, there's some very fascinating things happening. Any implications of sort of the newer technologies coming out in relation to the work that you're doing with Paani?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny story about 2 years ago now. I was on a team at Microsoft and I got called in that we were doing a reorg, and I was like scared what that meant because there was a lot of layoffs that were happening, and I was like, oh shoot, like am I gonna have to leave? And then my manager calls me in and she's like, okay, like you're gonna be on this new team called Search and AI, and they're talking about how search and interactions with technology is completely going to change soon. And I didn't know what that meant. I just thought it was a lot of, fluff. And then the following week, I was given a preview about what turned out to be ChatGPT because, Microsoft has a relationship with OpenAI that is the parent company to ChatGPT. And I saw it and my mind was just blown. I was like, wow, like this is going to change the whole world. And then a month later, it rolled out and the whole world like changed. Everybody's using AI now, and it's really, taken the whole world in a completely different direction. And so to answer your question, like I think of these new technologies as a great opportunity for us on many fronts of our organization. Like right now, currently, I'm working on an effort to make it so more of our internal operations are going to be driven by AI. So what does that look like? I'm working right now to make it so whenever somebody makes a donation, we're going to use AI technologies to just make it so all of the information is properly and more effectively communicated out to our builders, and they can start building and the entire process gets a lot more smooth, a lot faster, which will just make our internal operations just a lot more efficient. At the same time, just in the sense of trying to get more technology, I'm working to build better donor portals and stuff to really make the organization as autopilot as possible. And so that's just in terms of like leveraging technologies to make us more efficient. But in the longer term, we're exploring about how we can use AI to really empower more people in Pakistan. One use case that I'm very excited about is the fact that with AI allows people to now, with lower costs and higher reach, be able to communicate with populations that previously have never had access to education before and help them learn. And so my ideal situation, right, is that in the next couple of years, we'll be able to build out experiences that will take people in these rural villages that we're building wells in, and we can build educational experiences so they can learn how to read, how to write, how to do math and everything just from the communities that they're located in a way that's tailored to them. And so I definitely see AI as an opportunity to really empower not only our organization, but the people that we're working with in ways that have never been done before. So I'm super pumped and super excited to continue to take these learnings that I have working in Microsoft to hopefully benefit more and more people across Pakistan.
That's just amazing. Such amazing work. Khadija, can I turn it over to you for some of the Q&A that has come in?
Sure, sounds great. Thank you. So we have some questions already. Maliha asks, I'm interested, so she's asking, how do you start something on the ground in Pakistan? How did you find these contacts or friends? If I want to do something similar, open an NGO, what is the approach?
Yeah, great question. So I'll answer it in a couple of respects. So if you're looking to just do something similar to what we did, which was start a nonprofit in the U.S., leverage that to build relations with organizations in Pakistan, the process is very straightforward. You just register kind of as an organization in the U.S. Once you're registered, then you can start reaching out and identifying partner organizations that kind of meet your vision. And then from there, the things can grow like that. That was the model that we use, but I've seen a lot of people do different things. Some people they base their whole like they want control over the entire experience, and so they register in Pakistan, build an organization out in Pakistan, and then they come back to the US, mimic the registration, and then have that connective tissue there. And so, I mean, that's just more of the logistical stuff. As far as just execution, right? I think it just takes a lot of persistence and a desire to really solve a specific problem. So, I mean, for instance, if you're interested in, like, say, women's empowerment, like one thing that we've done recently is build a women's empowerment center. If you're interested in that, I would just make sure that you have a good understanding about the type of impact you're looking to create, what stakeholders you would want to be involved, what stakeholders need to be involved. And then just like, do you have people that you can trust to execute these projects, manage them from start to finish? And then do you have people here that are willing to support your vision through funding, through awareness, or through just any type of resourcing?
And is there a specific method you considered to find these people?
Honestly, I wish that you could just literally go on Google and ask the question and get the answer, but it's just a lot of research. Resources that have been great for me, just using LinkedIn, using like looking at like the UN or USAID where they've given out certain grants, looking at those grant hubs and seeing like, okay, what partner organizations have they awarded money to, and then trying to build a relationship with those organizations to see if they would be interested in co-creating a vision with you to execute any idea. But also similarly, if anybody wants to do a water project with us or has an idea for a project, we're happy to, work with you or a team to help execute that type of a project because fortunately we have a lot of our logistics and things figured out. And we've seen a lot of people who, have specific ideas that we've helped realize, which is why we've ended up building a school and doing some more advanced projects that seem a little bit out of our scope, like building mosques or building out orphan support.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, Henry has a question as well. He asks, how does Sonny balance competing career, passion, learning, and personal life demands?
Very poorly.
That's
no,
on him. I think he's stuck.
It's a great question, right? I think, am I stuck?
No, you're good. You came back. You were gone for a couple of seconds. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, it wasn't stuck for me, so hopefully it doesn't happen again. But yeah, I mean, in the past year, I've really started to be a little bit more reflective in terms of like, what are my long-term, short-term goals, and then trying to think about like, okay, how do I then make it so I can achieve these goals, um, without working myself down. So I really just try to set a list of targets each year and then try to make sure that they're reasonable enough that I'm not going to exhaust myself, but they're ambitious enough that they're really going to push me to learn and grow. So I think just for one thing I've also realized is that there's no like cookie cutter approach to time management and management for everyone. It's just kind of figuring out like, hey, what works for you? Like what works to your strengths, your time, and your commitments, and then trying to build and balance around those things. Because it's definitely tough. And I feel like if you're trying to do and move everything at the same time, you're not going to get very far and you're just going to get very frustrated very fast.
Okay, sounds good. So we have another question. This individual says, I have been running my NGO called Khavish Foundation, which works on the capacity building of rural villages in Punjab. Our first pilot project is based in Nankana Sahib, where we installed a freshwater plant, playground, and free internet service. These projects cost a lot, and I'm finding it difficult to fund them through donations. Is there a way I can bring in a social enterprise model? If yes, what recommendations do you have?
That's a great question. So, um, I think for us, one thing that we've really tried to make sure that we do is that for our larger projects, we try to find donors who feel like there's a match in terms of what they're able to support and impact they're looking to create. So for us, like when we've done these larger projects, like we've done these solar water centers and these type of clinics, we really make sure that we're paired with folks that are able to support that vision and willing to put in the funding over the long term. Um, that being said, I do think that for us, we try to avoid projects that require us to have that long-term social entrepreneurship approach, meaning like making it so we have some sort of profit that's enabling that growth, that's enabling the support for these projects. And so I feel like I wouldn't have the perfect answer, but if I were to face that type of circumstance, I would definitely try to find a long-term corporate sponsor, either that is in the Pakistani community or just a startup or a company that's looking to have a partner globally that is doing this type of work. The reason I say that is because we have different organizations across the US that like doing this type of charity work. They love being able to support communities and provide clean water. And they just need a partner organization to do that. And so for us, like we have literally water wells that have random logos on there from the US. But because we're able to send pictures and get people excited, those companies are willing to invest in us and sponsor these projects. And so I think that that's one creative way to go about that.
Okay, great answer. Henry has another question. How can the community donate or get involved to help Paani?
Very simple way to donate. You can just go on our website, Paani, Paani project.org, and just hit donate, and you can sponsor your own water well. You can do a fundraiser on our website to get your community involved and build water wells through us. You can also just spread awareness. Right before this call, Ahmad and I were talking about how he discovered Paani Project, and it was a result of his brother building a water well with us and sharing it with him and just sharing that story. And that's really how we've been able to grow as an organization. Just people talking and telling about like, hey, if they ever enter a conversation about water or Pakistan, they're encouraged we encourage people to just share like, hey, this is an organization that exists. They do good work. They're super transparent. They're very straightforward, very grassroots, and literally they make it so anybody can make a donation, and if they want to go and visit the water well, they can visit and even drink from it. So honestly, just sharing, following us on social media, telling more people about our cause, and just letting people know like, hey, we exist. That's probably the most effective thing, because like I mentioned before, we don't have any money that we're putting into advertising. All of our growth has come as a result of word of mouth, creative social media practices, search engine tactics, and things like that. We really rely on people just using their stories and their projects as a way for us to be able to grow.
Okay. Maliha has another question. How do you pay your ground staff in Pakistan? Is that through donations as well?
Yeah, great question. So when we consider a water well, like a $200 water well, what's baked into that is the entire cost of building that water well, which includes the construction process, physically like the digging, the tools that are necessary to build that. But it also covers the cost of paying the staff because nobody is going to be building these water wells for free. But I think one good thing that we've been able to do is just the economic impact that we've had in these communities as a result of having these people that are building our projects. Previously, there's a lot of people that are on our team now that did not have jobs, that did not have stable sources of income. And because of this great charitable work that we've been able to initiate, these donations are now allowing these people to have these opportunities to build in their community and now be able to take care of their families at the same time.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Qureshi has to run really quickly, but he wants to thank you for your involvement and your presence as well. So
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. And appreciate you putting, your time and resources into building a platform like APF. It means a lot, and it's great to see the community connected through this space.
there's a follow-up question on the Kavish Foundation. Do you have experience with point of sales donations? And do you think it will be applicable in Pakistan?
Point of sales meaning like people in person donating and then being able to take those donations and then like build with them. Is that the question?
I presume yes.
Yeah, I mean, so whenever there's a big event like a mass ICNA mass, like we're actually going to one convention this weekend. We do a lot of those sales just through Square, PayPal, like PayPal's readers and things like that. And so those transactions are all POS, like in person and such. But they're all people that are in the US that are, we're doing the transactions there, and then the funds are going to supply our projects in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? I think we are good.
If you would allow me, I'll ask. I think another question came in, but I'm gonna ask a softball question. You mentioned basketball, your love of basketball. I just Googled the Detroit Pistons record for this year. Can you shed some light on what may be going wrong with the Detroit Pistons?
Oh man, where to start? I mean, a lot of what's going wrong in these areas in Pakistan, right? Poor management, just a lack of vision, a lack of young talent. When they develop good talent, they decide to leave for somewhere else. So, I see a lot of parallels there. But funny enough, my favorite team is the Dallas Mavericks because their point guard Kyrie Irving, he donated to our cause to provide over 1,000 villagers access to clean water, and so
Oh,
I'm definitely rooting for them over the Pistons because one, it's more you get to see some good results, and two, he's got a heart of gold.
yeah, shout out to him. That's amazing work. Back to you, Khadija. I think two more questions came in.
Cool.
So by point of sale, he meant a contribution made by customers at the point of sale, typically by rounding up their purchase amount or adding a specified donation to their transaction total.
Oh, I see what you're saying. We haven't worked with organizations like that where I think what you're referring to, if I'm understanding this correctly, is like when you go to like a restaurant and it's like, oh, you can round up, and then the rounded up part goes to our cause. We don't have experience in doing something like that. We've thought about adding something to our website where, like we can cover certain additional costs by encouraging people to donate like the cost of a coffee, a transaction. But we haven't explored that specifically. But yeah, I don't know like what the strengths and weaknesses of that would be, but I imagine it would probably just be positive to have those relationships.
Yeah, one of the things I'll add, and one of the things I was really impressed about is the company matching sort of portal you have on your website, and that maybe to whoever's asking the question, that might be a little bit more powerful, because these organizations, corporate organizations, have these massive matching programs where all you have to do is just tell them that you've donated to A, B, and C, and as long as you're a registered 501c3, Sonny can probably speak to it a little bit more, like they'll match the amount, whatever you've donated. So I found that that's a fairly easy way to double your impact.
Yeah, 100% spot on. One thing that's actually cool about some of these companies is, like I work for Microsoft, obviously, and one thing that's cool is for me, whenever I volunteer an hour, they match the hour with $25 in donations. So that's just another way of them doing the company matching. And so it's been cool because the past few years, we've been able to get an extra $15,000 per year directly towards supporting some of our costs that
Amazing.
Otherwise we wouldn't know how to pay for. Like if literally funds our website, it funds some of our when we wanted to do merchandise, it funded those things. So it's definitely hands down one of the best ways to quickly take advantage of relationships with US based companies and use that to drive more impact.
So another question, Maliha asked, can we reach out to you directly? Is there an email that you can provide, please?
Yeah, the fastest way, support@paaniproject.org. Shoot us an email, any information, and then somebody will probably get back to you between myself and a couple of other our team members within 3 to 5 days. But yeah, just probably the fastest way. We're very transparent, and we definitely want to, if there's energy to partner or energy to give, we're super excited to always do that. I'll say that again, it's support@paaniproject.org.
Thank you. Dr. Qureshi has a question for you. When they build wells, are they taking measures to replenish groundwater, such as rainwater pits?
That's a good question. I was actually researching that a couple months ago because I realized that that's been a huge issue in Pakistan, especially with organizations that don't take those precautions. So in the areas that we build in, we make sure that we are not damaging the water table, because if we do that, that will cause more problems in the long term than anything that we're solving for. One thing that's actually been a little bit good is the fact that a lot of the areas that we operate in, there is good amounts of water that will just show up as a result of just excessive rainfall. And so that has allowed us to replenish the water table in those areas. But yeah, just from that technical standpoint, we make sure that the areas that we are operating in, that we are drilling in, they're not doing any damage because of those concerns with groundwater and with the water table.
Perfect, thank you. Maha has a question. She asks, how long does it take to build a well?
Honestly, for like from the time you donate to the time you get the water well, we try to do that in 90 days maximum. But it can vary. Like during Ramadan, we were making sure that we were constantly on the ground, and we were able to take water wells that were built like 15 days before Ramadan and get them to donors before the end of the month. And so we guarantee within 90 days for all of our projects.
Perfect. Any other questions? I think we're good. So we can proceed with closing remarks. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Okay. So just some final notes. You can follow, we would love to connect with everybody here, whether that is on Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I personally recommend going on to our Linktree, because that has any upcoming events as well as social media. And I would also like to give a shout out to the webinar we're having tomorrow. It's a webinar focus. We're highlighting Pakistanis in public service. We have these 3 really incredible people joining us, and everybody that's in this call, if you would like to register, you can do that because we would love to have you. And if there's nothing else, we can say our goodbyes.
Sonny, this was amazing. I thank you on behalf of everyone who's watching and broader. You are doing some amazing work. And I will be privately cheering for the continued growth of Paani Project going forward. So thank you, and thank you so much for taking up the time today.
No, thank you all for the platform and the opportunity. I really appreciate it, because even if one person just hears about this and is inspired by this, or whether they want to give back in their own way, or they want to give back through us, that means the world. Because I feel like water is something, it's so precious, it's so important. Like, we take it for granted, the fact that we can get up right now and in seconds we can have a fresh cup of water. Like, that's not the reality for most of the people that we're serving in these communities. And so hopefully in this time, we can encourage more people to give back in some way to create that change and empower more people with this essence of clean water. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And I appreciate all the time and the prep leading into this.
Okay, and I would like to thank everybody for attending, and I think I'm going to look into donating a well.
Yay, it worked.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.